right, everybody. Welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly Webinar for Emergency Medical Services. My name is Josh Gregory, and I'm the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. Now, our team ran one of the largest FedEx operations in the country and has had a decade of experience valuing, selling, and consulting on logistics businesses. And so the goal of these webinars are to help all of you understand the opportunity that comes with owning a business in the EMS industry. So we're here for you to learn about the industry, to ask questions, and find the best way to accelerate your journey into the industry if you do decide that it's the right fit. Now, if you are here live, we'll have a Q&A at the end in case there's anything that comes up, anything that we're talking about today or that you have questions about in the industry as a whole. And if you have questions and you're here live, make sure to put them in the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. If you put it in the chat or if you raise your hand, I'll miss it. Now, some of you may be watching on YouTube later. If you have questions that pop up as you're watching this right now, feel free to send those directly to info@routeconsultant.com. Always happy to answer, or feel free to come to the next live webinar we have. We always have these on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Central. Join us there and have your questions answered. Now, like I said, all of these previous ones are on YouTube. So if you're looking for more content or seeing what we've talked about previously, they're all there on our Route Consultant YouTube. But as you're trying to learn this industry, as you're trying to educate yourself, there's always going to be, in any industry, not just this one, some terms and some categories that you need to learn to really understand the space. And one that you'll hear thrown around pretty often in this one is the concept of advanced life support ambulances versus basic life support ambulances. And there are some really important differences there, and understanding those differences is going to ensure that you're providing the right services to meet the needs in your community and finding the right product fit for what really makes sense for you to offer and what has the right profitability structure for you to offer. So Hans Fakir and I will be on today to talk through all of that. And if you haven't been here before, if you haven't seen one of these, today's your lucky day. Hans is going to be here. He has a long history in this industry in a bunch of different places, both as an operator, owning them and helping others really to get into the space for the first time and mentoring them on a weekly and daily basis as he's doing that. So Hans, if you want to go ahead and jump on and say hello.
Hello, what's going on, Josh? How are you?
I'm doing well. And I think right now, I was just saying all those mentorship opportunities you're doing. I think right now you're traveling right now and doing one of those yourself, right?
Yes, right now I'm actually in the Ministry Office of Health in Jamaica. So we are helping someone start an ambulance company in Montego Bay, Jamaica. So they let me use the conference room. I told them I had a webinar to do. And
I love the commitment, Hans. I love it.
By all means necessary. We're going to get this done.
Yeah.
But it's always a pleasure to be here with you and show people definitely that this is not a field for people that's just in the medical industry. This is not a field that's only for someone who has their doctorate or they're a doctor or a nurse. This is for anybody aspiring to change their life, maybe the life of their loved ones, and just enter a industry that is recession proof and, it's going to go through any economic situation we go through. People are always going to need healthcare.
Yeah.
So anytime you ask me, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, that's not just an American thing. And so what we're seeing now is that this is an opportunity that expands beyond the U.S. So if that's something you're looking to get into, Hans now has international experience in the EMS.
yeah, I'm gaining it.
Yeah,
definitely. Listen, I'm here for it all.
Yeah. So I kind of talked through what we're going to be focusing on today, the ALS versus BLS breakdown. Now, I know there's a lot of things that differentiate the two. So I think maybe the simplest way to start to understand it is kind of walk through what the different levels of service are for each of these. What are the different things that you would use an ALS for versus a BLS?
Definitely. Okay, so ALS stands for Advanced Life Support, and BLS is Basic Life Support. So it's kind of self-explanatory, right? You're dealing with the more serious injuries, the more serious medical emergencies. And on the BLS side, you're dealing with minor emergencies, maybe scheduled appointments, because again, it is basic life support. And so you're going to see particularly the ALS ambulances for the hospitals and for the 911 dispatch. And you'll see BLS for private, scheduled transportation. Someone who does not necessarily have a life-threatening emergency, but probably needs the help of a medical trained personnel and a stretcher because they cannot walk. So those are really the basic differences of the two categories.
Okay, gotcha. Now, from what I'm hearing, with the differences and the kinds of things that you'll have to do, it sounds like there's probably different training and education that you might have to have for the different personnel for ALS versus BLS. So can you kind of talk through that side of things?
Yes, definitely. So for a BLS truck, let's start with that. You would need a basic EMT, right? And you know what? 2 years ago, they cut it where in the state of Georgia and a lot of states throughout the country, you would need a basic EMT and advanced EMT, EMTA advanced. Now, because of the shortage of EMTs, or because the state's really recognizing that we're not transporting life-threatening patients, they're allowing people to have two basic EMTs or an EMR, meaning just a driver only, and a basic EMT to man your BLS truck. Now, on the other hand, you have an ALS truck. You can have an EMT basic, but you need a paramedic, which is the higher advance, right? I think a couple of webinars ago, I gave the example of a CNA is the basic nurse, and LPN is the middle tier, and then you have an RN. It's the exact same thing, right? You have a basic EMT, which is equivalent to your CNA, you have your EMTA, and then you have the higher level, which is the paramedic. So anytime that you're operating a ALS truck, you're going to need a paramedic to staff that truck.
Got it. And does everyone in that truck have to be a paramedic, or you just have to make sure you've got at least one?
At least one. At least one. And again, we're going to talk about this, but of course, the higher the call, the more severe the call, then the more you're going to get paid if you want to look at it that way. But then the higher certifications you need on that truck.
Got it. And what kind of education, like how long does it take to become a paramedic?
The average paramedic schooling is 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay. So it's definitely a higher bar if somebody's not already a paramedic and you're basically having somebody who's a basic EMT, that might even be a strategy of, if you have aspirations to get to ALS, is start, your guys who are already EMT trained enough on your BLS, and you start to put them through some training in school to prepare to be a paramedic in the future.
Yes. Yep. Definitely. I think it's a benefit. And the one thing that we do right now is we focus on having EMTs, and a great incentive for them is to go into paramedic school so you can keep those EMTs. So that's actually a good thing that people can do if they're owning a EMS company or you're acquiring one. If you want to learn how to keep the employee turnover down, you're going to get a lot of employees that are EMTs and they're using your company as a filler while they're going to paramedic school. Well, listen, if you create tuition reimbursement, you can in-house those EMTs and keep them for a long period of time. And then you can turn those trucks into ALS trucks.
Yeah.
So,
Not only do I want you to become a paramedic and I'll help you become one, but I'm going to have a job for you once you're done. So you're retaining them and you're keeping them, and you've got those higher level employees at that point too.
Yeah, because you can also create the employee schedule around paramedic school. Like, you're giving them all the cards, right? So the chance of that employee finding that type of incentive somewhere else is slim to none, right? Yeah. He already or she already likes where they work. You're paying for them to go to paramedic school. So you're accomplishing two things at once.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I would also assume that the equipment on the trucks is probably a little different. What should they expect there?
Yeah, so in most cases, when you're transferring or you're upgrading your trucks from a BLS to ALS, there's only really two things you're going to need. You're going to need to go from having a regular AD to a 12 lead, right? A life pack. So people in that medical field, they know what that is. And if you've ever been on an ambulance, when they put the leads on you and it's like, 6 of them, then you're going to have to upgrade to that particular machine. And you're going to have to upgrade your meds. Like right now, we carry no medications as a BLS truck, right? But if you again upgrade it to an ALS truck, you're going to have certain meds on there because now you can administer medication, and then the 12 lead in most cases. That's really it. All of your heavy equipment stays the same. Keep in mind, Josh, that even when we're doing BLS, we really have everything that an ALS truck needs outside of those two things, right? And then if you want to go further into it, I think the only other thing that would change, of course, would be your protocols, because now you have medicine on board. So your medical protocols will change, and and the protocols will state everything from how it's administered, the dosage, the patient, and everything like that. So your medical director would have to sign off on new protocols in addition to the one that you had previously, right? So these are going to replace the BLS protocols, and you're going to have ALS protocols now. Your medication changes, and just your 12-pack or your lead, 12 lead machine will change.
And I guess outside of proving that you have a paramedic on board, do you have to get the truck inspected and show the equipment to be certified to do ALS?
Yes, and like I said, in most states, they're gonna just check those. In the state of Georgia, they'll have a list of things that you need to go ALS. And what your inspector will do is come and check off that particular list, and you're really good to go. But they're really just paying attention to your medication, how it's stored, how it's labeled, and the protocols.
Okay, gotcha. Now, you've kind of talked through a few different things here about this change. How much more expensive is it to be operating one of these ALS ambulances?
It's not that much more expensive. I think your biggest hurdle or your biggest financial burden, I guess, or your biggest expense will be your medic, right? Because now you can hire a medic with a BLS company, but you're paying him the average rate because you're not doing ALS calls. Well, if you hire a medic on an ALS company, you're going maybe $25 an hour, $26 an hour, rather than $18 to $20 an hour that you typically pay your EMTBs and EMTAs, right? So you're looking at your biggest expense or recurring expense is your payroll.
Got it.
But I'm also assuming if you're in the business of going from BLS to ALS, or just not even converting, because we want to keep in mind that you can still run BLS calls. You can still have BLS trucks.
Yeah.
Maybe like when I did my movie events, I had 4 BLS trucks and I had 1 ALS truck specifically for movie events, right? So I knew the particular staff, Michael, that would staff that truck. That was his truck, for my movie events. So again, the only other expense is your payroll.
Got it. And is there any different kind of expectation in terms of paramedics expecting higher benefits than a basic EMT, or do you use the same type of benefit structure for all the employees?
Yeah, same benefit structure. I would love to get a lot of paramedics on a full-time payroll, because that means that business is good, right?
Yeah.
When you're hiring paramedics to go full-time, business is great. But again, they fall with the same benefits. They do have the privilege of going on the more exciting, I guess, runs or routes, like the movie sets, like the Atlanta Hawk, basketball games and football games, because for most of those contracts, you need an ALS truck. So
Okay.
they do get the convenience and the benefit of going to those type of events and getting $28 an hour to do a sporting event or a concert.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that. When you're thinking about, okay, I want to go to ALS, I want to have paramedics. What are the different types of providers that are going to ask for ALS or require it, or where do you kind of look to find those services, and what do they look like?
I'm definitely, if I'm in this business and I'm thinking about doing 911 or even backup for a bigger ambulance company that services 911, then I'm going to convert a truck to ALS. If I'm looking to provide services for, like we said, the sporting events, we know that they are going to ask for ALS truck. Parks, concerts at parks, ALS trucks. Anything that has to do with concerts, sporting events, or leisure activity that you want to take, you want to be a provider for, you're going to need an ALS truck. Every Avenger movie that I've been able to, provide services for, they required an ALS truck, We never used it, never had to go in service, not one time. We were really there just to watch the stunts. And the greatest thing about servicing those type of events, they usually have a doctor or physician already there. You're almost playing backup to that doctor physician. Anytime you go to, and football games are the best. Whenever you go to a football game, I'll be honest with you, Josh, it's a free paycheck. Why? Because they have a physician, they have the team doctor, right? And you're playing third to them. So you're really doing whatever they say. And then I want people to pay attention to this. In most states, it's not every state, we still have to call 911. So we're there to lend support until 911 gets there. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, for, almost everything, it'll get resolved by the team doctor. If it's really serious, they'll pull in the doctor. And then if they need you to take somebody to the hospital that isn't a 911 situations, which is just such a small scenario, but football teams and a lot of sports teams, a lot of movies, they got enough money where they're just like, we're covering every scenario. Then you get paid and it's a pretty easy gig, but
Yes. And you got the athletic trainer, I'm sorry. So you got the athletic trainer, the team doctor, and then we're like, hey, what do you want us to do?
Just stay in the
That's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you a quick story. I did football games for high school, and 90% of the time I did ankle wraps. Like someone thought they twisted their ankle, I would wrap it, they get back on the game. Never transported not one person.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you find in general that ALS pays more than BLS, those opportunities?
It does, but everybody has to be careful on what type of contracts are you going to get. Again, we spoke about this briefly in previous webinars. If you have a really good billing system where you can vet someone's insurance, then a typical BLS call that would probably make you $600-700, ALS calls can range up to $1,500 to $1,800, depending on the call. And another thing that a lot of insurances do that will really help you make a lot of money, of course, you want to make sure you're doing it responsibly. When you're doing ALS calls, you have to account for every piece of equipment that you are using when you're transporting a patient, oxygen, bandages, and all that can drive up the price that you're actually billing for. BLS calls, again, we're really just transporting someone that needs their vitals checked, something very simple, and it's very lucrative. But again, to answer your question, yes, the price tag it can range on ALS costs. The pickup and the drop-off is already higher than the pickup and drop-off for BLS, but you're adding all the other expenses, all the equipment that you've used to take that patient. It's going to drop up the cost.
Got it. Okay, well, I think it would be helpful for everybody if you just kind of gave, what was the first time that you had the decision to add an ALS in your kind of company, and then what was that process like? Easy or hard, and what can people kind of expect from that?
Yeah, this is a great question. Story time again. I was doing exceptionally well, running 5 trucks as a BLS. We're making over 120 a month, and somebody called and said, hey, a friend needs a truck for an Avengers movie. And I was like, oh, I'll do it. Like, how much is it paying? $250 an hour, right? At that point, I was paying my employees $16 an hour. So I did the math. I said, hey, if I give everybody $20 an hour, I'm still making $210 an hour because I'm on 2 people. And who doesn't want to go watch things blow up and explode? And so when I told them I could do it, they're like, hey, your truck has to be ALS. I'm like, I called my regional director. He said, hey, check the checkoff sheet. I went and got a 12 lead. I got some meds. I called one of my medics who was already there for me. And in a week time, we turned a BLS truck to ALS. But honestly, after those Avenger movies, that truck was used only for BLS, right? But I will give you a quick financial reference, I guess. Again, we were making 120 plus with just our BLS trucks. I remember getting a 1099 for $87,000 in 6 months for my ALS. That had nothing to do with the BLS. Yeah, just one truck.
Yeah.
Because what we did was, and we didn't know this at first, we were just so happy to get the opportunity that they would use us for 3 hours. And we're like, wait, this is not really worth the price of gold, right? This is not worth the price of admission for us to do this. So what the gentleman told me was, listen, when you're bidding for this, at minimum, do an 8-hour minimum. So even if they and what we put into the contract was, even if they say, yes, we need an ALS truck, and we start driving and they cancel us, we got paid 8 hours. That's why we were able to, garner so much money, almost 80 some thousand in 6 months, because we said 8-hour minimum, 4 days, and then they would book us for 2 weeks at a time.
Got it.
It was great. So that was the one time I said, I need to capitalize on this, what I
Yeah.
need to do. And I paid the state fee, because at that point in Georgia, you had to pay an additional inspection fee, which was $1,500 for your EMS director to come out and inspect. But now it's only $240. So it's definitely beneficial. And again, once you buy your equipment, the ALS truck is not costing you anything else.
Yeah.
It's not like a additional reoccurring outside of the paramedic.
Yeah, and I guess kind of help think through this side of it. So let's say you're not regularly running an ALS. It's kind of it's for these contracts, these opportunistic things. Did you have a paramedic on staff when you brought them on, or did you know someone who could come on for those specific contracts? Like how do you think about, how much ALS business do you need to do to have a full-time paramedic on staff, basically?
I would have to say that I would have to have a contract with the hospital to do discharges, or I would run backup for a 911 agency, right? With the movies and the special events, I wouldn't suggest hiring a paramedic full-time and paying a paramedic rate if 90% of your business is BLS. Because the truth of Josh, is it's not going to be hard to find a paramedic that doesn't want to get extra money watching a movie, right? So,
Yeah.
so you want to be strategic in that, but I would not exhaust my payroll paying somebody to do something, that it's not required them to do. Like, I'm not going to pay them as an ALS provider when we're doing 90% BLS. But when that time comes, I will definitely pay you $30 an hour to work, so I don't miss the opportunity to get these type of contracts. But yeah, so.
So what would you say is the best way to find paramedics that you can kind of bring on for short-term work? Is that something you just put out a job ad, or do you have a
No.
list you build? Okay.
Yep, I'm going directly to fire departments.
Got it. Okay.
They're right there.
Paramedics?
90%, no, I wouldn't even say 90. 100% of firefighters that have EMS attached to their fire departments have paramedics there.
Got it.
In fact, in the department that I came from, you had to be a paramedic to even get a promotion as a captain.
Okay.
And I want to put this, this is actually a good topic. If you notice, most fire departments will have ambulances because 90% of our calls are EMS.
Hmm.
So even though we'll spend a lot of time doing fire training, we'll spend more time doing EMS training. 90% of the calls across the United States are all EMS calls.
Got it. Okay.
So they will have paramedics, EMTAs, EMTBs there. So if I'm looking for paramedics that don't want to really work overtime, if they don't want to get burned out on running 911, and I want them for these special contracts, that's never been a problem getting them from fire departments. They love it.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and they have the time off, the schedule with blocks where they can jump in and do that. So, and
Yes.
maybe if you have two that alternate, you pay them each,
Yeah.
and that covers the contract for a 2 or 3 week stint.
You'll find firefighters that will literally swap their fire schedule out to work for you and get $30 an hour, making, more than they're making working at the fire station. And if they have an opportunity to get off the ambulance, if it's a busy ambulance at the fire station, and work at one where they can sit on their phone, watch a movie, and just wait for radio and say, hey, a stunt man got hurt, they'll do that all day of the week, twice on Saturday.
Got it. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So I think that's really helpful for people who are trying to think through, and they're if they're at the point where they're comparing basic life support and maybe some opportunities on the advanced life support side. And, if it's just a contract, just because you don't have a paramedic on staff, one doesn't mean you have to find a full-time tomorrow. And two means that you still can turn around and take those contracts. Like you said, the first one you saw, you kind of converted a vehicle in about a week. And after that conversion, it's not like there's a bunch of ongoing crazy costs associated with it. It's equipped with the things that it needs. And so the only times that the expenses will change are when you bring that paramedic on. And you'd only bring that
Yes,
paramedic on if it's a contract where you're making a bunch more money anyway.
definitely. Now, keep in mind what I would do, even if I'm running a BLS company, if I'm ever thinking about hiring a paramedic full time, he's probably, in my mind, my supervisor 2, 3 months down the road,
Got
right?
it.
Because that would be a great person to uh, check the reports that the EMTs are doing, train people, help those that are trying to go to paramedic school. So if you're thinking further down and you know that you found a paramedic that would be a great fit as a supervisor, that's the one time I am considering, you know, taking that pay cut or whatever, paying
Yeah.
that person to put them as a supervisor.
Yeah. You take a profitability hit a little bit to have them on board, but then you're building your business to be able to scale more easily, where you can pull back some, and it kind of gives you an always accessible ALS resource. If you can find something, maybe it's discharges, maybe it's a series of contracts to keep them busy most of the time. And I think that's a great call out as you're building your business and deciding that, hey, maybe this isn't something I can really manage on my own, or at least don't want to manage on my own.
Yeah, that's a great. It's so much easier to teach someone the business aspects of running an EMS company than to teach them the medical side, right?
Yeah,
So even from a morale standpoint, can you imagine if your paramedics taking orders from an EMTV?
yeah,
So just you want to make sure that you put someone in a position that has the knowledge, has the business acumen, but they can just fulfill so many needs that the company has, right? And
yeah.
I think that's just getting two things done at once. Hey, I'm going to get my supervisor, and he's going to be my medic, and he or she is going to know what to look for when hiring another medic for that ALS truck.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're trained, higher trained employee. And so they just know more. That's a great call, a great fit as you're thinking about building out your business plan and really planning for the next few years instead of just the next contract. So I think those are great kind of dual thought processes of, one, ALS, if there's an opportunity, you can jump on it. There are paths to do it quickly, but it may be something that it's, as you're thinking about your business plan in the future, there's ways you should be building, and whether it's growing your own employees to be medic, or bring somebody on as a more permanent addition to the staff, based on what your goals are. Your goals
Yes.
in space may be ALS is purely opportunistic income that I want to take, and I don't ever plan on giving up any management, and that's fine. Or it may be I'm thinking about this as a 10-year journey. I know that there's going to be a point where I'm going to need 5 supervisors with the scale that I plan on building to. So one is just a drop in the water. I know that I'm going to need tons of medics by the time I'm done with this program. So it's your scale, what your ambitions are and your goals, and how you can kind of take advantage of that in whatever marketplace you're in.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think when people look at or think about their scales and their 5-year goals and 10-year goals or business plan, they want to keep in mind that the higher uh, the higher the certification, the more opportunities, right? We talked about that company right in Nashville that's been around since the 70s, started BLS, went to ALS, and now they do air life support. So there, it's sky's the limit when you're thinking healthcare, right? And now they own helicopters and airplanes as well. Company that started in the 70s. So if someone can take their blueprint and say, okay, this is how far I could go, why not explore those opportunities?
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. Uh, Perfect. Well, that's really what I wanted to cover and talk through when it comes to that ALS versus BLS breakdown. If anyone does have questions for Hans or I about anything we talked about or anything we didn't, feel free to type it into that Q&A button and ask. You've got about 10 seconds while I do my closing to type and type fast, and I'll get to it. But if you are here for the first time, or you're watching live or watching on YouTube for the first time, There are lots of other ways that you can continue to learn about this space and figure out if it's the right fit for you. We have a free 101 course on our site. We have tons of webinars for you to go back and watch on our YouTube. But we also have ways for you to learn and engage with us in person. We do a digital summit and in-person workshop that are all part of the same package, where you can take that first step to really learn and decide if this is the right industry for you or not. That's really our goal of those summits and workshops. We want you to learn and then come in person, have your questions answered, put a face to a digital face, and really sit and ask about your state, the specific challenges in your areas, and what your plans are for this space. And we can help you answer it and think through it. And hopefully at the end of that, really feel confident that it is the right space for you or not. Either way, we consider it a win. And then as you're deciding to learn with us, build with us, Hans can serve as a mentor as you're starting and creating a business, or as you have already created one and you're trying to figure out the best ways to optimize your business. Lots of ways we can help. And so if you reach out to us, wherever you are in this journey, we're happy to provide our resources, our expertise, and make sure that you find that best fit.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, if we could do it in Jamaica.
Yeah. And I have no problems with all of you finding just 100 Jamaican clients for us to work with. I'll make sure to make but other than that, thanks everybody for being on this week. Hans, thank you for being here as well and providing all of your knowledge.